All right. Gonna keep this one pretty quick. Got to get it in before lunch, but just wanted to touch on the idea that Trump should fire Pete Hegseth because he's become too much of a liability. But I think we should focus on why he absolutely won't. There's no shot that he's going to fire Pete Hegseth, and I'll be happy to be proved wrong. But replacing him, first of all, would be an absolute nightmare for Trump. Even if he could replace him, he would have to nominate someone who would be basically the same type of person as Pete Hegseth in terms of craziness, devotion to being anti DEI, anti woke, and a blind loyalist to Trump. So that would be a really tough guy to try and confirm in this environment because remember what protected Hegseth and got him the votes that he needed in the beginning in January was the fact that he had Matt Gaetz, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK to diffuse the media story around him. So there was a firestorm right in the lead up to his hearing and then on the day of his vote, but there was so much going on around the administration at that time that the spotlight wasn't directly on Pete Hegseth and wasn't trained on him and trained on the senators who were going to have to vote for him. That wouldn't be the case this time. That would be the only story that we'd be talking about. Those votes would be a lot more awkward and embarrassing, especially given the fact that they were just wrong about how bad Pete Hegseth would be. Maybe they thought that they would get like 6 months or a year out of him before he'd get kicked to the curb, but they got 3. So I think that would be a lot more difficult. You'd probably have to go the acting Secretary of Defense route for a long time, and that's just a mess. He doesn't want to do that. But aside from that, they're just not going to fire him because they don't fire people. They don't admit they're wrong. They have to create the veneer of a confidence game within this totalitarian state that they're trying to build. They don't apologize. They don't admit mistakes ever. They don't fire people. They don't walk anything back. Everything that they do is on purpose. They meant to do it, even if the reality is it was a total mistake. Look at what they did with Harvard. Starting off that firestorm at Harvard was apparently a complete fuck up and a mistake, but they turned it around and said, no, we meant to do it actually. And we're going to double down because they don't admit that they're wrong. The reason for that is because if they were to admit they were wrong, it would completely dismantle their entire argument for power and control. But let's look at a couple other examples. On the tariffs, Trump pulled back the tariffs on every single country because it was clear that he was going to completely crash the stock market and the economy at the same time. But he kept the tariffs on China and he kept doubling down on the China tariffs, even though China clearly wasn't going to blink. Now we're seeing that Trump might crack a little bit on the China tariffs as of today because the economy isn't getting better. The stock market situation is not getting better. People are getting in his ear about how bad this is for businesses and for consumers. So it might change because Trump might calculate that doing irreparable harm to the economy for no good reason at all and for no benefit is actually quite worse for him in his political position than walking something back, even though he'll find a way to spin it and say that he actually won. He actually made the greatest deal of all time, and we're all a bunch of idiots. Let's look at the El Salvador situation. Sending people who have not been proven to be members of MS-13 or Tren de Aragua to the Gulag in El Salvador. There was documentation that they actually did make a mistake in sending at least one individual to that Gulag, and they shouldn't be there. But instead of admitting that they were wrong and bringing him back, they've turned it around. They're just lying, saying that he was a member of MS-13 and photoshopping pictures of gang tattoos on his hands. And across the board, doubling down from the press secretary to the president's aides to the president to his MAGA influencers. They are all just blatantly lying to your face about what is happening here because they cannot acknowledge that even the slightest mistake was made. They close ranks, they call them criminals, and they say that they're never coming back. Then look at Signalgate. I mean, Signalgate should have resulted in the first one, should have resulted in the firing of every single person or the resignation of every single person in that chat. Mike Waltz should have been gone. Hegseth should have been gone then too. But instead, they close ranks and they push forward. Here, we have another signal leak. And this one's even worse because the people in this chat with Hegseth were not cleared for any of that information that he was putting in there. I don't know for the life of me why his wife and brother need to know about are imminent attacks on Houthis in Yemen, but they still close ranks. They blame the media. Hegseth, looking all drunk at the Easter egg bowl on the White House lawn, is like blustering with his weird, unevenly shaven sideburns next to his kids, using them as props to call the media liars next to the Easter Bunny. How serious can you be if you're slurring your words, trying to defend yourself, and blame the media next to the Easter Bunny? It's just a weird look. But they blame the media for it. They do whataboutism. They rally around the flag, and they do anything to avoid admitting fault here. You don't see people like Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin ever admitting that they were wrong about something. Vladimir Putin's gotten 800,000 of his own soldiers killed in Ukraine for a war that they are, I guess you could say, making progress in, but that he initially said would take like a couple of days to conquer Kyiv. He's not saying he was wrong, and he is not pulling back. You have to push forward. An imperfect regime can be toppled because people will recognize that it's imperfect. And that's why they don't admit that they were wrong about anything. Once you admit an imperfection, you completely shatter the illusion that you are either a god, in Kim Jong un's case, or you break the illusion that you are thoroughly in control, like in Vladimir Putin's case and in Trump's case. That breaking all of that would be detrimental to Trump because acknowledging that he's not totally in control and not totally right about everything would lead to potential political abandonment. If people see things really sliding the wrong way, you might see members of the House or members of the Senate start to break with him. But you are seeing them in total lockstep with him right now, advocating for ignoring the Supreme Court, like completely disregarding the rule of law and due process because they need it. Is worse for them to break with Trump right now than to just lie to your face and to completely shit on the Constitution. It's better to do that than to break with Trump. But what if that wasn't the case? Trump doesn't ever want to see that reality. The only thing that you need to remember about Donald Trump is that he cares about strength and about winning. Admitting you are wrong is what weak losers do. And so he will never admit that he was wrong. He still says that he won the election in 2020, and he still says it was rigged. And he still says that January 6th was a peaceful day of folks just perusing the Capitol grounds. So, no, he is not going to fire Pete Hegseth. It is going to be very offensive, and this problem won't go away. They're going to continue lying to you, and they're going to continue bullshitting and spinning and doing whataboutism. I would love to be proven wrong. I won't take the video down if I get proven wrong. I'll just be happy about it. But I doubt that I'll be proven wrong.